welcome everyone to the launch of Soils for Life's new strategic plan for 2026 to 2029. I want to acknowledge I'm dialing in from southern Melbourne, which is the traditional lands of the Bunurong people, and I want to recognise their long history of managing this continent and acknowledge any elders who may be present today. So why this event? Really, we wanted to bring together all the people who we work with and who we really depend on to have the impact in the world that we try to have. And that's the farmers whose knowledge and whose stories you all so generously allow us to share, as well as our partners, our supporters, and our stakeholders. And we wanted to bring you together to share our plans and really establish the foundation for delivering on this plan over the next couple of years. We'll be sharing the full plan after the event, and I'd really encourage you, this is the reason we're sharing our plans, is because we want you to reach out to us to discuss how this strategy aligns with the work that all of you are planning and ways that we can work together to achieve our shared goals. So please do reach out. In terms of an agenda, we have our relatively new chair of our board, Olivia Lawson, here, who will in a moment welcome us and officially launch the plan. Then we'll walk through the plan. And then we have a panel discussion with a really fantastic panel who I'll introduce later, including a surprise guest who I'm very excited will be joining us. I'll let you know who that is in a minute. We'll hopefully have some time for questions from the audience as well. So as we're going through the presentations and the panel discussion, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. Our team are on the line and they'll potentially just be responding in the chat, but also hopefully we'll have time to put some of those questions to the panel or to myself as well towards the end. We'll be trying to wrap up at 11 a.m. Eastern time on the dot. So with that, I will hand over to our chair, Olivia Lawson.
Thanks, Ellie, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today as we officially launch the Soils for Life 2026 to 2029 strategic plan. By way of background, Soils for Life was established in 2013 by Sir Michael Jeffrey, who recognised something that is becoming increasingly evident to many around the world, that healthy soils are fundamental to our future. Michael often spoke about the importance of soil security, describing it as a solution to some of humanity's greatest challenges. And as he put it, soil security can address the world's 6 existential challenges: food, water, energy security, climate change abatement, biodiversity protection, and human health. It was a bold vision then, but it is even more relevant today. Like many organisations pursuing ambitious goals, the journey has not always been straightforward. The early years brought their share of challenges, including Michael's illness and his decision to step back from the organisation he founded, all while Soils for Life was still establishing itself and finding its footing. Yet throughout those challenges, the organisation remained true to its purpose, ably led by past chair Alistair McLeod. It's important here to acknowledge Alistair for his enduring service, support and leadership of the organisation over many years. It's now almost 3 years since I joined the board in June 2023, and at that time I saw an organisation with enormous passion and a deep commitment to pursuing a vision of agriculture that works with nature, an organisation that recognised soil not simply as a production function, but as one of the most effective solutions to many of the challenges facing agriculture and society more broadly. What excited me then and continues to excite me today was the belief that productive agriculture and environmental stewardship are not competing objectives. They can and must go hand in hand. Over the past 3 years, the organisation has gone through a period of renewal. It has matured, evolved, and strengthened while continuing to deliver the case studies that Soils for Life has become so well known for. We have also expanded our focus and launched new programs designed to support farmers who are curious about becoming better soil stewards and who are looking for practical ways to take those first few steps. At the same time, we have invested in the organisation itself. We have built the team, expanded our partnerships, strengthened our systems, and importantly, fostered a culture that reflects our values and provides strong foundations for future growth. None of this happens by accident. So I would like to acknowledge Ellie and the entire Soils for Life team. Their leadership, dedication, and commitment have been instrumental in guiding the organisation through this period of growth and renewal. They have consistently demonstrated a willingness to adapt and innovate while remaining focused on delivering meaningful impact for farmers, landscapes, and communities. The board has had the privilege of working alongside a team that's deeply committed to the mission and are ambitious about what can be achieved. The strategic plan we are launching today reflects that evolution. We are operating in a different environment than we were even a few years ago. Serious momentum is building behind regenerative approaches to agriculture. Interest is growing from farmers, industry, investors, governments, and consumers alike. That momentum creates tremendous opportunity, but we are also aware it can bring about risk. For a relatively small impact-focused organisation like Soils for Life, it demands clarity of purpose, clarity of vision, and clarity of strategy. We need to know where we can make the greatest contribution and how we can best support the transition to more resilient farming systems. I'm incredibly proud of the work undertaken by both the board and the team to develop a strategic plan that meets this moment. It is ambitious but practical. It honours the organisation's heritage while positioning us for the future. And most importantly, it provides a clear pathway for how Soils for Life can continue to create meaningful impact over the next 3 years and beyond. Personally, I'm genuinely excited about what lies ahead. The foundations are strong and the opportunities before us are significant. So it gives me great pleasure to officially launch the Soils for Life 2026 to 2029 strategic plan. Thank you all for being part of the journey and for your ongoing support of the organisation and its mission. I'll now hand back to our CEO, Ellie, who will take you through the plan in more detail. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Olivia. And Olivia heads up a fantastic board, and having the transition has just been so smooth. I just wanted to show you who else is on our board. Having a supportive and a capable and an enthusiastic board really makes my job possible, as well as enjoyable. And I do feel very lucky to be governed by such a great group of people. Especially important that we have experienced farmers on the board, because that's who we exist to serve. Of course, the other thing that makes the job possible is our team. And most of them are on the call today. We are spread right around the country. We have staff in almost every state and territory now. People who bring a really diverse set of skills, from farming to soil science to agroecology and social science. But at our core, we're an organisation that works with people, and our whole team are skilled communicators and facilitators, and I think that really is at the heart of everything we do. I'd also like to acknowledge our farmer advisory panel, who are a fantastic group of producers from around the country, many of whom have been case study farmers or otherwise involved in our work, and their guidance and their advice helps us to always stay grounded in the needs and perspectives of our farmer audience. So we're about to walk through the plan. Just a reminder that if you do have questions as we go through, just put them in the chat, and hopefully we'll get to at least some of them towards the end. Firstly, just quickly on our organisational values. I'm not going to speak to these in detail, but these really guide the way that we work. And I will say that overarching all of them is a starting point of humility. We don't know everything and we don't pretend to know everything, as well as constructiveness. And we really focus on how we can be helpful rather than ideological. And I think that's in really short supply in the world right now. And we really do try to focus on those two things in everything we do. Why soil? I still think, and Olivia mentioned this quote, I still think no one said it better than our founder, Michael Jeffrey. Soil is what makes life on this planet possible, and restoring the health of soil ecosystems, of which farmers manage more than half in this country, is really at the heart of meeting so many of the challenges we face. There's still a lot of debate about the term regenerative agriculture, and I thought I'd just briefly mention our approach to this term. We take the approach that this is a useful term and a meaningful term. It's useful because it's meaningful, and for this reason, it is a term we use. But we're also mindful that language is powerful and that the way that this term has at times been used has been alienating to some. And so while we haven't thrown it out, we're careful about how we use it. We don't shove it down anyone's throat. And we know that especially when a concept starts becoming more mainstream, which the concept of regenerative agriculture is, we need to demonstrate that we're not throwing around buzzwords, but instead that we're sharing practical information that people need in a way that makes them feel included. And so I think that's really important way that we demonstrate those values as well. As everyone in this room would know, the conditions that are facing Australian farmers and producers are increasingly challenging, not least as a result of increasingly extreme weather events and also volatility in markets, which we're seeing, at its absolute extreme this year. There's also a growing recognition that farming systems built on healthy soils and functional landscapes are better equipped to withstand these pressures. And along with that, an increasing interest in regenerative approaches to agriculture across the food and agriculture industry and within governments. And, this creates a really strong imperative and a significant opportunity to accelerate support for the adoption of soil stewardship practices. And we look at these trends and we absolutely see those opportunities. But as Olivia mentioned, they also bring risks, and that includes the potential for this concept to be co-opted, oversimplified, or reduced to a sort of a meaningless marketing label. So as part of the process of creating this strategy and looking at those opportunities and those risks, we developed a theory of change which describes 4 interrelated outcomes that need to occur for our mission of supporting Australian farmers to regenerate soils and landscapes to be achieved. And I'll just briefly speak to each of those. The first of those is I guess, kind of obvious around farmer capability, but more specifically, the ability of farmers to develop the mindsets, the skills, the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to actually take action. One thing we've learnt, though, is that those skills and knowledge on an individual level are most effective when farmers also have access to communities that provide social infrastructure and support with the likes of local mentors and champions and strong peer networks that can sustain adoption over time. And that really is, in our experience, what does allow that practice change to sustain. Thirdly, the social norms. And, we know that people are incredibly influenced by the norms in the society and the community that they live in. And so our third outcome is around regenerative approaches becoming normalized as part of mainstream agriculture, or more normalized. And finally, the systems that are around, the food and agriculture systems that sit around farmers. And our goal and the outcome we want to see there is that farmer knowledge and perspectives are amplified and are integrated into the broader food and agriculture system through policy, research, value chains, industry mechanisms, so that those institutional settings actively enable rather than hinder the transition. And we know that all of these outcomes are unachievable by us alone. And so our strategic planning process tries to define our specific role in working towards each of those outcomes over the next 3 years, and what our role is not. And I once heard someone describe strategy as the process of deciding what not to do, which we've been quite focused on. So at its core, this new strategy is about scaling impact. And I'm extremely proud of the work we've done over the last 3 years. We've learned a lot about how to support our key audience of newly curious farmers, those who are interested in how they can become better soil stewards, to take the first steps, and also to keep going when they inevitably encounter setbacks. And so we've learned a lot about how to work with those newly curious farmers and how to support them. And it'd be great if we could engage every producer individually, but we obviously can't. We will grow the number of farmers we directly engage over the next 3 years from around 2,000 over the past couple of years to more than 5,000 over the next 3. But much more importantly, over the next 3 years, our overarching strategy is to find ways to deploy our learnings in ways that multiply our impact beyond the farmers we work with directly, creating a sort of ripple effect. So for example, supporting experienced and passionate farmers to become mentors and champions, and more effective mentors and champions. Many of them are already doing this. Another example, upskilling agronomists and advisors to efficiently extend their reach through their client networks. So our first 4 strategic pillars relate to each of the outcomes identified in our theory of change, and they define our specific role, and implicitly what our role is not. And we're going to walk through each of those pillars in a moment. The 5th pillar is really about the foundations in our organisation. So jumping straight into the pillars. The first pillar is all about shifting the narrative, mainstreaming regenerative approaches to agriculture. It involves 3 key strategies. Firstly, what we've done since our founding, telling compelling, credible farmer stories in ways that connect with people of all walks of life, and paying attention to the details, where we communicate these stories, how we communicate them, what platforms, what formats, written, visual, online, in person, on YouTube, on our podcast, on social media. We know that people learn in different ways. The second is building the profile and voice of trusted farmer advocates, supporting the people who are innovating on the ground to be more effective leaders in their own communities and networks. And thirdly, extending our reach into new sectors, regions, partnerships, audiences, so that regenerative agriculture is regarded as more universally relevant and valuable across all of Australian agriculture. So just normalising the concept. And I think across all of this, we really emphasize the power of authentic storytelling, especially when we earn the right to touch people emotionally by pairing story with practical information. And, there's a clear relationship to Pillar 2 and the fact that we often wrap stories together with practical information, but we have to earn that right. Now, I did want to bring in some of my team to talk about some of these pillars. Each of these pillars is sort of overseen by one of our management team. This pillar, Pillar 1, is overseen by someone who just started at Soils for Life yesterday, so I thought it was a bit early to dump her in the deep end and present in front of 70 of our closest stakeholders. But she's on the line, Jen Sheridan. But I will hand over now to talk about Pillar 2 to Kate Johnson. Kate's our Farmer Stories Manager. She has for many years been deeply involved in the crafting of the stories that are documented in our case studies and developing those stories And she's also responsible for overseeing this pillar of the strategy. So I'll hand over to Kate now.
Thanks, Ellie. So this pillar 2, is really about the practical support that our target audience of newly curious farmers need. So it's about the nuts and the bolts, really. It's about meeting farmers where they're at and reducing the barriers to taking the first steps. And what it involves is we've figured out a range of really effective ways to support this audience. So including a variety of accessible resources and training programs. Ellie's mentioned a few. So for example, our case studies, our practice guides, in-field training, workshops, safe-to-fail trials, and decision-making tools. So over the next 3 years, we'll share these more widely and in better ways. So doing that kind of amplification work that Ellie was talking about. So we'll leverage our existing resources, making them as accessible as possible to as many farmers and producers as possible. We'll also be expanding into new industries beyond our historic focus on grazing and recent focus on broadacre cropping. So including orchard and dairy, as well as continuing to look for new opportunities to support rangeland pastoralists, especially in this critical year of the rangelands. We'll also be piloting the establishment of demonstration farms that support farmers to collect robust data, to better understand what's working and why, to support decision-making on farm, and to share with other farmers as well. So many farmers who are curious about trying new practices are not yet ready to put money into training or consultation and so forth. And so this is where we really fit into the ecosystem of farmer advice, to expand their knowledge and widen their toolbox in a kind of no or low cost way. So we're supporting farmers to kind of be ready to engage further. And Ellie, did you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add across all of this work in this pillar, but across all of our work, one of the things that we're trying to become more intentional about over the next couple of years is how we achieve that value that I showed earlier of credibility in everything we put out. And the tension that we experience is that we know that a lot of the innovation that's happening in this space is happening on the farm. Farmers are trying new things, finding new ways to work with nature to restore ecosystems in ways that allow them to farm better, that sustain their productivity and resilience. And then a lot of the research is sort of trying to catch up with that and not always having caught up yet. And that's partly because soil ecosystems are just so incredibly complex, and that research is complex. And so the line we're trying to walk is to make sure that we're not shying away from sharing innovation that's occurring when it's occurring, but we're also making sure that we are drawing on the best available information, the best available science, and making sure that people can trust what we publish effectively. So that's something we're really focusing on over the next couple of years, and I think it'll continue to be something that we debate at length, probably every day. Okay, for the next pillar, I want to hand over to another one of our management team, Courtney Young. Courtney is a grain grower. She's a flour miller. She's also our farmer learning manager, responsible for overseeing the peer learning elements of our work and this pillar. So I'll hand over to Courtney.
Thanks, Ellie, and lovely to see you all virtually. So Pillar 3 is based on the fact that humans are social creatures, that learning rarely happens in isolation, and that we trust things that we hear from our peers. It's also based on the fact that an individual change at an individual level can only be sustained when that individual is supported by a community going in the same direction or supporting that individual. So this pillar involves multiple strategies, some of which we've done a lot of work in over the last 3 years, and some of these are new strategies for us, which is really exciting. So we're going to continue refining, demonstrating, and supporting the replication of our peer learning model by integrating peer learning activities into our work in dairy, horticulture, and cropping, and sharing what we learn through these activities to inform others and the other partners and organisations we work with. We're going to be strengthening the support system ecosystem around farmers, running intermediary peer groups and training programs that upskill advisors, agronomists, extension professionals, and other trusted support people so that farmers have more of a support network around them. They've got access to knowledgeable, locally connected guidance beyond our programs and the programs run by other groups. We also will be growing farmer leadership and place-based networks, developing a soil stewardship farmer leadership program, which we're really excited about. And this will build local mentors and champions and explore regional models that strengthen connections between farmers, communities, and landscapes at a local level. So I guess in addition to what we've mentioned here, we recognise the role that strong on-ground community networks play in responding and adapting when crises hit. So be they climate-related supply chain shocks or economic or public health crises. So our community building work is designed to support the adoption of soil health regenerative practices today, but they also lay the foundation for community level well-being and resilience to whatever disruptions lie ahead. Thanks,
Great.
Ellie.
Thanks, Courtney. We're going to keep barreling on. The fourth pillar, I'm going to be quite quick speaking about this, and we do have an intention to allocate someone to leading this pillar, but that person hasn't yet been defined. So this pillar is really all about how we share the things that we learn from all of our on-ground work with farmers more widely, with researchers, with government and industry. And again, it's something that in this strategic plan period we're aiming to become more intentional about. It's not something we strongly focus on. We're definitely not an advocacy organisation or a research organisation, but we do know things from our work with farmers, and we do have relationships with institutions which we've probably not utilised to the fullest extent that we could have. And so we have two key approaches here. One is really partnerships, so partnering with others, with the Regenerative Food and Farming Alliance, which has just been set up to work on policy, with the Soil CRC, with the Parliamentary Friends of Soil, and sort of feeding into those partnerships with information that we've learned from our on-ground work. The second is to create what's described here as targeted, bounded opportunities to pursue this work, and specifically running a 3-yearly soil stewardship summit where we will try and have sort of a high impact moment where we can share what we've learned to inform industry and research and government. So that is an exciting part of our work that we will we'll be focusing on more in the next 3 years. All right, we're almost there. Pillar 5, I want to hand over to Esty Yanko, who's our Operations and Partnerships Manager. Esty is responsible for making our organisation work so that we can just get stuff done without all the irritations and frustrations that often get in the way. And I think the whole team is just so grateful for everything she does. She's also responsible for coordinating our interactions with partners, grantors and donors. So a lot of you will have come across her in that way. So I'll hand over to Esty.
Thanks, Ellie. So this pillar is really about maintaining a healthy and productive organization underpinned by efficient, well-funded, and impactful operations, but also ensuring that we foster the health and well-being of our employees as individuals who are really passionate about our work. So it involves a few different approaches. The first is securing long-term diversified funding with an increased focus on untied contributions, which really gives us the ability to leverage donations to secure project funding. And that's because a lot of project grants often require a level of cash contribution coming from us. And even more importantly, untied funds allow us to address strategic priorities as they arise. So an example of this is just recently we used our core funding to invest in staff hours and a media consultant to leap on an opportunity to speak up about the growing nitrogen crisis. Using our recent dairy case study, which focuses on reducing nitrogen inputs and making sure that that story and other similar ones were heard. Untied funding is really the single most important aspect for an organization like us that works in such a complex, kind of ever-changing environment and trying to have an impact, as these kind of moments occur. This pillar also involves continuing to build strategic partnerships with teams on the ground, such as producer groups and NRMs, as well as those in industry and research to deepen our impact across the country. And lastly, what's really important to all of us working here is nurturing a safe, inclusive, flexible, and fun work environment and a great culture with happy and healthy employees, because none of this work could be possible without the commitment of a group of really dedicated people and ensuring that they're they have great well-being and are satisfied and enjoying the work that they're doing.
Thanks, Esty. And I also want to emphasize here that one thing we're also focusing on as an organization is changing something which, given the work we do, which relates to land management, I think needs to be changed, which is that, historically we haven't had much in the way of engagement with First Nations communities. And I'm really proud that we now have our first First Nations partnership with an organisation called Native Foodways as part of our Orchard Resilience project. And we are really approaching that with humility, as I said earlier, learning how our work interacts with the knowledge, with the experience, with the perspectives of First Nations communities. And, I hope it will build from there. So that brings us to the end of our presentation on the strategic plan. I'll just stop sharing my screen. So now we're going to roll into our panel session. A reminder that if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. The team and may respond to some of them, and then we may also have time at the end to ask some of them to the panel. But I want to introduce the panel. So we're very, very lucky to have such a great panel come and join us to talk about the plan and talk about the next couple of years. Firstly, I want to introduce Rebecca Gorman. Many of you will know her. Rebecca's a New South Wales-based farmer and philanthropist. She's a member of the Soils for Life Farmer Advisory Panel, as well as wearing many, many, many other hats. Welcome, Rebecca. We've also got Grant Sims, a Victorian broadacre cropper, multi-species seed producer, a recent addition to the Soils for Life board, and also a member of our Farmer Advisory Panel. Welcome, Grant. Next, we've got Kate Myrams. Kate is a Gippsland-based dairy farmer. Her and her husband, Peter, were the dairy case study that Esty referenced a moment ago. Kate's also a member of our Farmer Advisory Panel and recent talent on Landline, along with Grant and myself. Some of you may have caught that episode, which is great. Sally Garris is the next member of the panel. She's a program manager at the MacDoc Foundation, which is doing a huge amount of great work to support transitions in food and agriculture and has been a long-time supporter of Soils for Life. And surprise guest on the panel, a recent addition. Really grateful that Jonathan Lundgren could join us. John is a doctor of entomology who spent more than a decade with the USDA. He received the Presidential Early Career Award for Science and Engineering, has written more than 100 peer-reviewed journal articles. Sorry, John, I did try to simplify your bio, but it's hard to simplify. He also founded the Ecdysis Foundation, and through it runs 1,000 Farms, the largest, as far as I'm aware, the largest and most comprehensive study of regenerative agriculture anywhere in the world, which will soon be coming to Australia. John might mention that. And now John also runs his own farm. So welcome to all of you and thank you. I wanted to start the conversation with a question, to the whole panel, and anyone feel free to jump in. I'm keen to understand what you've seen in terms of a shift in attitudes and conversation about soils and regenerative agriculture over the past 3 years. I might start with the Australian speakers, and then I'm keen to get your perspective on this as well, John, from the global and the US perspective. Anyone want to jump in first?
Righto, I will.
Thanks, Rebecca.
I've mentioned this story before, but I started this journey in farming about 13 years ago, and at that stage I was doing a holistic management course with Mark Gardner, and renowned HM farmer David Marsh was also doing that course. And after we finished that course, a little bit later, David's fabulous at keeping in touch with everybody. Part of that incredible sort of community that you're referring to in the strategic plan, Ellie, the importance of that. He's excellent at doing that. Anyway, a couple of years in, I said, "Oh, David, I really think we're getting traction here. I really think we're kind of getting to that critical mass." And he said, "Oh, I agree. I said that about 20 years ago." So I think it depends where you are in the process. But having said that, I reckon in the last 3 years we've got to a funny point, a curious point where there's now possibly so much information, particularly online, that people can access that I think where to start is a bit of an issue because there's so much information. But it's fantastic. If you do a little survey on YouTube, for example, you just have to go to some of the sites and there's, multiple thousands of views and likes and so forth. So, I mean, I think we really are getting to that critical mass now, Ellie.
We'll have to check back in 20 years. Anyone else want to chip in on that shift in attitudes over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Ali. G'day, everyone. I've seen a lot of it, over the last, 10, 20 years, but particularly the last 3 to 5, where it's probably like 5 years ago, or you'd go to conferences and workshops and things like that, and it was all talking about the ideology and the concepts of it and what we're trying to do. And now there's more, as it's sort of getting more momentum, more people implementing and things. It's not like there's less of, right, we want to know why this is working. We know why it's working. We just want to know how to practically implement it. So there's more of a swing towards, let's work out how we can do this and make it work, rather than why should we make it work. So that's a big sort of change, more of a hunger for that practical knowledge now.
Great. Kate or Sally, did either of you want to jump in?
Yes, I can jump in, Ali. Hi, everyone. It's a delight to be here with you this morning. One of the shifts that I've seen is just the concept in all of community about, we used to be told all the time that we need big ag and we need corporate ag and we need high input ag, and we wear the cost of the environmental degradation because otherwise we can't feed the world. And I think this one of the big shifts in attitudes is that we can feed the world in ways that also make the ecology actually better.
Thanks, Kate. Sally, did you want to jump in before we go to John?
Oh, no, I think I would just echo what I've heard from Rebecca, Grant and Kate so far. I mean, I have been probably working in the food system for a relatively shorter amount of time than the other speakers on the call from a philanthropic perspective. But I think, and I joined MacDoc Foundation about 3 years ago. So for me, it's been a really interesting journey where, there was a lot of momentum around, this sort of natural capital summit, lots of conversations. We've had some crazy geopolitical shifts in these 3 years. And actually the thing that's brings me a lot of, optimism at the moment is while we have this really challenging fuel and fertilizer crisis at the moment, it's actually opening up the space for these conversations. And so building on all the work that's sort of been done over the past 3 years, it's sort of like everyone's armed with the right information and the right conversations to be having now that this opportunity has been really cracked open to say, how do we do things differently and better?
Great, thanks. So what are you seeing, John? Like, you definitely get around. You're based in the US, but you're all over the world, it seems. So what are you seeing in terms of changes over the last couple of years?
Where to begin? There's so many pieces of this puzzle that seem to kind of be crystallizing, and it feels like we have a perfect storm for some real change right now. I think that we're starting to change the vernacular. Regenerative agriculture isn't just soil carbon anymore. Regenerative agriculture isn't just no-till and cover cropping anymore. It's a much more systemic concept that reflects connection with family, community, and the natural world. And what we're finding is that when we prioritize those things, that it solves an awful lot of problems. The other thing that I think is really cool is that this is becoming less about a list of practices and box checking exercise and much more about outcomes. And regenerative agriculture is supposed to deliver on things like, yes, carbon capture and storage. That's an important one, but biodiversity and reversing that, correcting water cycles, reducing pollution, growing healthy food, making our farmers and our rural communities healthier, both mentally and physically. And so, yeah, I think we're starting to figure this out. At the same time, the wolves are at the gate, aren't they? And trying to make it about something else. And right now is really important for us to have a real clear message of what it is that we're talking about when we say we're regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. I guess just coming back now to the core of the work, which is supporting those farmers who are starting to get curious and interested and wanting to shift. And the plan talks about moving beyond awareness, which has been a focus for us over sort of the first 10 years of our life, like raising awareness of how important soil is and how important farmers are in terms of taking care of the soil. Moving from that awareness raising to supporting implementation and helping farmers, actually providing that support. And that's challenging because it involves doing something new and uncertain. And so I guess I wanted to ask particularly to Grant and Kate and Rebecca, how did you overcome some of those barriers? You're sort of, I would say, well down the road in terms of changing practice, still on the journey, but well down the road. What were the key things that helped you overcome those barriers? And maybe we'll start with Rebecca.
Thanks, Ellie. I mean, I'm in a sort of maybe a different category. I didn't have any barriers to this way of farming. In fact, my barrier was to conventional farming that I grew up with, and I had left and done other things, and I didn't actually feel like I could come back to farming and do it that way because it didn't suit my skill set and my way of thinking. And it was only when I came across the what we now call regenerative farming, holistic management in my case, that I thought that I could actually manage that. And so since then, I've really had just general encouragement. And I think there's possibly more people coming in who are like that. They're coming in with a sort of a different opportunity in mind. So I've only had one really uncomfortable conversation with someone at a wake when they had quite a few on board and they wanted to have a real go at what I was doing. And once in a supermarket with someone telling me that an old friend telling me that you've got to put more on. You can't take this stuff off and not put something on. And anyway, so not many barriers for me at all, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. And I might actually broaden the question and say, for the next cohort, the people who are coming in now, quite new and maybe quite rooted in the more mainstream approach, and this is for you, Grant and Kate, as well, like, what do you think they need?
Well, I'd say confidence and evidence and support are the sort of the three things, because I suppose when we started, we didn't have heaps of evidence, and I just had more of a burning like belief, and didn't gel with me some of the things we were doing, and I just sort of wanted to change. But it was harder back there. There wasn't heaps of evidence around, but definitely now, if there's networks and conduits like Soils for Life to help support with some of that evidence and link up to other people for support, because even now, this far in, you still have those moments when, it's getting cold and wet and things are slowing, you've got pressures, and then you start, it's that self-doubt or that, looking over the fence and hang on, am I doing the right thing? But it's that support and the mentorship from other people that are doing it, and just sometimes even for me, just to say, you do this every year, they're putting energy into the roots, and as soon as the sun's out, bang, it's going to go. And it's just having that network and support is massive to help keep people on track and things like that.
Did you want to add, Kate?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add is I think that it's really helpful to keep the awareness that for farmers in change and farmers embracing something new, there's internal work as well as external work going on. And the internal work is all about finding and recalibrating their place as a farmer and who they think of themselves as a farmer, and that it's okay to do things differently and to show up at the pub as someone who does things a little bit differently. And I think if as an organisation we can really hold the awareness that that's happening for them as well as what they're physically doing differently, and then, what are the things that support that? And they're all the things that Grant just said. But yeah, that we're at least pretty complex beings, and that we need support in our complexity as we change the way we farm.
It reminds me of a conversation I had on the podcast, on the episode that's just been released this morning, actually, with a dairy farmer who said that after trialing and eventually rolling out very different approach to pasture management across his dairy farm, now multi-species, no fertilizer. He said, I've started he said, I probably shouldn't say this, but I've started to have fun in my farming. And I was just really interested that he said, I probably shouldn't say this, as if like the human side of the farmer isn't allowed. And it kind of made me think of that, what you just said, Kate. That we are human beings. We're creatures that have a lot of complexity to us, and we really can't ignore that. I just want to shift direction a little bit, and I know actually I should have mentioned earlier that Sally does have to duck off on the dot of 10:30, and I just wanted to shift to sort of that Pillar 4 work and the institutional system side of things. And, I think to some extent, research institutions and industry bodies, government, policymakers, they all shape the conditions that farmers operate in. And this is the focus of that fourth pillar of our strategy and that fourth outcome area. But it's sort of explicitly a secondary focus to our on-ground work with farmers. I just wanted to put this question first to Sally and then to Rebecca, and then I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as well, John, on like where the opportunities are to influence those players in the system, those institutions, and sort of where that fits in the bigger picture. Maybe we can start with you, Sal.
Sure. I might start by just sort of taking a step back and actually saying, I think starting by listening to farmers and what farmers are telling us is really important. And so, what we constantly hear is that farmers care deeply about stewarding the land, but the system may not be working optimally for them to support that. And I think particularly at the moment, there's a big sense of feeling squeezed with the fuel and fertiliser crisis, and farmers are working really hard, carrying quite a significant and disproportionate amount of risk, and a lot of limited control over pricing and rising input costs. So I think what comes to mind for me first is just reducing the risk, the financial risk of the transition towards these more regenerative practices. It's about recognising that farmers are running businesses as well as stewarding land, and sometimes the upfront costs and uncertainty about the change can be barriers, and frankly, quite fair and rational from a business perspective. So I think, you know, from a sort of systems perspective, the expanded access to grants that support farmers with this transition, particularly through, you know, existing or new government grant programs around the National Drought Fund and other types of government grants. And I also think access to more flexible and responsive finance. So finance that responds to the way, you know, the cycle of farming. It's not like you just have to make regular repayments once a month and it doesn't matter what's happening with the season or a weather event. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I think the second thing that comes to mind is, you know, I think Kate and Grant have already touched on it around this access to trusted advice, and obviously Soils for Life is doing great work in that space. But I also think, you know, we've seen extension services play an important role in expanding and rebuilding independent extension support. I think can play a really critically important role at scale and in place where we're talking about trusted, non-commercial, locally grounded and responsive support that is both providing practical, economically and environmentally sound advice. And I think the last point I would make is just around stronger alignment at a systems level. So I'm talking as sort of about policy settings, markets, research, those sort of bigger things that all need to sort of work cohesively together to support this shift. And that could be anything like embedding sort of these concepts around regenerative and soil health into existing national strategies. The National Food Security Strategy is obviously one that comes to mind at the moment. And obviously we're in this fuel and fertiliser crisis, and where input reduction is a real opportunity to drive change. I think this has been talked about for a long time, but just ensuring the economic system rewards outcomes that farmers are being asked to deliver. And then my last point were really about just capturing farmer voices into research agendas. What's the experience? What's your lived experience, your expertise, your knowledge? How's that designed with you? And also how a policy is designed with farmer voices. So my reflection is really about just getting the system to catch up. And I'll hand back to you, Ellie.
Thanks, Sal. Well, Rebecca, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think one of the things that we've done, I think Sally has touched on the wealth of initiatives that are occurring now and that are enabling a really good and robust discussion for particularly something like the National Food Systems Security analysis and consultation that's going on now. There's some really good and challenging conversations going on about understanding, you know, what is the state of our food system and what's the true cost of the way we grow our food. And adding to that is this new alliance that we've recently set up that Soils for Life is involved in, the Regenerative Food and Farming Alliance, to elevate the stories and benefits of ecological agricultural production up to government and into that policy level. And we see that the work done by organisations like Soils for Life effectively redressing the problems that are created by industrial agriculture. I mean, that's a simplistic line, of course, but let's leave it with all its caveats. So shifting the policy settings at the root cause level is what these organisations are trying to do, right? We're trying to mop up things, the problems. So having Soils for Life as a collaborator in this group, I think, is incredibly important, and a real groundswell is what we're feeling of people wanting to put input into changing actual policy levers. But we know there's some other very big voices in that conversation. And so, you know, it's great to feel like there is a real groundswell.
Thanks, Beck. John, what are you seeing in the US around institutional settings, policy change? I know there has been some shifts, or maybe talk about shifts, or at least excitement about shifts. It's hard to get a sense of what's actually happening, but yeah, what do you think is what's happening, and what do you think is needed? Where are the opportunities?
Oh, geez. I think, ultimately change is going to come from the bottom up. In my experience, governments don't lead, they follow. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be having sort of a top-down and bottom-up sort of strategy in terms of making things change. But I do think that the growers are going to lead this. If it's going to be pure, the growers are the ones who are going to lead this. And that is what's happening, I think, in the U.S. There's, the corruption of it is a real fear as major supply chains try to step in and own the definition of regenerative and kind of push it in certain directions that may not be attaining the outcomes that regenerative food systems are intended to. And I think that science is really going to play an important role. Fundamentally, I think we're all in this space where we just don't know who to trust anymore, right? I mean, we're bombarded with so much information, and the pillars of our society that we used to be able to rely on when you wanted to know the truth, those have been eroded and so I think science has a really important part to play, but scientists are going to have to change in order to make that happen. And that's one sliver of the cultural shift that we're talking about, but of course it's near and dear to my heart. And so embedding, science within these communities to use it to self-assess our decision making and make sure that we are still running in the right direction in an empirical and a non-biased way. I think that's an important facet of this whole thing. And I don't know whether that's getting to your question. In the U.S., taking $3 billion away, renaming it and giving us $700 million and back and patting themselves on the back for it, that doesn't seem like it's really getting us where we have to go. And yeah, but it's
Well, I might
a
just
lot of
build on what you,
gains.
yeah. So I might just build on what you were saying, like the point you made around the science and the research, and it might be a good opportunity. And I know that Sally is going to have to duck off in a moment, so do that whenever you need to, Sal. Thank you. Um, it might be a good opportunity, John, for you to talk a little bit about 1,000 Farms and about what it's trying to achieve, and then about the plans to bring it to Australia.
Yeah, you bet. I came down to Wilmot Field Day, which was a really powerful event. This last, boy, when was that? March? I think I met a number of you there, or re-met some of you. Um, we've been trying to figure out. So we visited, I've deployed scientific teams to 2,000 farms across North America, doing really comprehensive systems assessments on these different farming operations. And it's clear that we need to scale this. And the question is how do you do that? What is regenerative agriculture in North America versus Australia versus England versus Ireland versus Brazil versus testing our perceptions of what regenerative agriculture is, and then empowering farmers to start measuring their own operations and under unique cultural and climatic situations. And so we're bringing teams to Australia end of this year and beginning of next, I hope, if everything aligns, and we'll be handing the keys of the 1,000 Farms initiative over to the farmers. And over the next few years, we'll be having a presence there. That's not to say that there isn't amazing things already happening. Soils for Life is a perfect example of this. We're interested in that collaboration. And one thing that we bring to the table is a really hyper efficient ecosystem monitoring tool that's couched in terabytes worth of information. So we can use that from supporting local decision making on the farm all the way up to community development and global food policies. So it's a really powerful model for,
Yeah,
pushing this
and
forward.
I think one of the things that strikes me about that work is just how holistic it is, and the fact that it is treating farms as whole ecosystems, or well, really partial ecosystems, but looking at the whole ecosystem that's occurring on that farm, which is a very different approach to agricultural research to what's often done, which is narrowing down to one specific variable, which, isn't a very good fit for an ecological approach to agriculture. And
No,
so, I think of what one way of dealing with the complexity of soil ecosystems in agriculture is narrow down so that we're only looking at one tiny little piece of the system, but then you're not actually really looking at the system. The other way is we just do lots and lots and lots of farms so that we're capturing trends across that incredible diversity. And that's what you're doing now, approaching 2,000 farms just in North America. So that's really exciting. I guess one thing I did want to pause and ask the whole panel is, what else is needed? Because obviously this is, a moment for Soils for Life to step into the spotlight and tell you all about what we're doing. But I think it's so important that to whoever's got some background noise, could we mute that?
You're available, thanks.
I'm not sure who that was. I think it's important to acknowledge that, as I said earlier, we can't do this alone. By no means can we do this alone. We're not the right organisation to do every bit of it. We do our little bit and others do their bit. And I just wanted to invite the panel to talk about other things that need to happen. And maybe we could start with you, Rebecca.
Look, there's so many places to start, and I'll just pitch in one, a conversation about about scale. How do we understand what scale is, and how do we understand what convenience is? We have all been educated in convenience food buying, and that so that we then play in to the power structures that support that convenience of whipping down to the supermarket and picking things up. And so we've allowed that power to be built. How you unwind that to have a much more distributive idea of food production and food purchasing. These are big and difficult questions. Also, what do we understand by scale when we're looking at the true cost of how we grow our food, the human mental health cost, the human disease cost, a huge biodiversity impact, given that our whole export policy has been for generations built on the idea that we provide a really competitive priced commodity product that is produced in an incredibly efficient way. And we've been so good at that as Australian farmers and producers. Actually really having a deep look at the impact that system and that culture of production has, the impact that has had on our biodiversity, just for a start, and all the other things, the decreasing community size in our rural area, the huge debt levels and that a lot of our farmers are carrying, and the mental health cost that is on that. And I think you all understand the flow-on effect. But having a high-level export policy culture conversation I think we need to be having those sorts of discussions.
Mm. Did anyone else want to chip in? I think also naming particular organisations or initiatives that are really important. I'm very interested to profile other things that need to happen. We very much focus behind the farm gate, and working in partnership with on-ground NRM organisations, land care organisations, place-based producer groups that have those long-standing relationships in particular regions, and I think that's a really important part of the whole piece as well. But did anyone else want to chip in on what else needs to happen to make to achieve these outcomes?
One of the things I'm seeing, Ali, is a breakdown in agricultural training and nothing really coming in to replace it. So we've got increasing requests from primary schools and secondary schools to come onto our farm and to see what we do and hear all about it. And then, they say, well, where do we go next? Now, our son's been doing the regenerative agriculture course through Southern Cross University, which has been discontinued. And to my knowledge, there's no other place where young people who are really keen to be part of agriculture in a regenerative way can formally get recognised university qualifications in Australia. And then that feeds into our scientific community, our research, that whole area that is currently funded in a way that pushes back against regenerative agriculture, regenerative food systems. There's no in at this stage. And really what my son's doing is he's saying, all I need to do to learn is to be in the places where farmers who are doing this are talking to each other. I don't need to be at a university. And to some extent, I really agree. But also, you need the ticket into the jobs where you can make the change. And so how do we, that's a piece of work that needs doing.
Grant or John, did you want to jump in?
Send your son my way, Kate. We'll train him up. I think number one, I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to say, and one of them is regenerative agriculture has to be more than just about buying a regenerative product and putting it out there. And that's really been getting swept up, and right now is this concept of what I'm calling industrial regenerative, which is, I'm replacing all of my chemical inputs or synthetic inputs with regenerative inputs. And yeah, we can move the needle forward with that a little bit, but it's not going to attain what's possible within our food system until we change the mentality and the culture around food production and understand what this really is. This isn't a question about soil. This isn't a question about water. This isn't a question about human health, or it is, and it's about all of those things. But fundamental and central to all of those things is life and growing life on farms. And farmers that make that decision, suddenly all of these other regenerative outcomes fall into place. It's an amazing tool for trying to get that to happen, and is the mechanism that farmers need. But boy, we've been trained so hard not to think that way. You got to till it up, you got to spray it out, you got to stomp it. Those things are taking away our farm, and it's like, think of those as opportunities, or get creative in how to do it. Trust me, I'm a farmer, okay? The sheep break all the time. I'm trying to get everything established, those darn things, and yeah, I get it. But where there's a will, there's a way, and that's where community and support comes in.
Jonathan, I think that challenge about what we're doing in our farming is creating life across our farm. We actually need the whole food system, the whole of society, to think actually the purpose of all our work is to grow life. It's not just the farmer's job.
Why is the sole reason, or sole area that we focus on biodiversity around us, the pests, right? I mean, that's how many people that that interface solely with their environment by, okay, I got this, I'm sick, or I've got this pest, or I got this weed, or whatever that I need to get rid of, instead of looking at the other thousands and thousands of species that we cannot live without, and appreciating that and understanding the joy and fulfillment that brings us. Golly, I wish I could. When I'm asked, what's the magic wand that if you could, wave it in order to change everything, I'd bring every politician and every philanthropist and media person out to a fully regenerative farm and just let them experience it with all of their senses. No data that I put behind that is as convincing as that, because they cannot deny what they've just experienced.
And that, I think that goes to, a question that's come up just now in the chat around, what benefit will actually be achieved by providing more data through studying more farms through the 1,000 Farms project. And we talked about that a little bit when you came on our podcast, John. But do you want to just briefly speak to that?
Sure. I think that so there's some people that say regenerative agriculture is never going to work, and no amount of data I give them is going to convince them otherwise. There's other people that know that regenerative agriculture is absolutely the answer, and no amount of data I ever give them is going to convince them otherwise. But then there's this good chunk of folks right in the middle that don't know yet, or need validation, so that somebody that's never experienced what they've experienced on their farm can see that this is a subjective, or not a subjective, but it's an empirical, examination, rather than just listening to somebody else's story. And I think that that's the power of science right now, is that yes, those stories are critical, but it's a sample size of one. And what we really need to understand is how often that happens, how reliable that's going to happen, and what the potential is if we actually start to scale this up.
Yeah. Grant, did you want to add anything before we move? I might ask a couple of questions from the chat. Did you want to add anything before we do that? You're on mute, Grant.
All right, sorry. Yeah, I just sort of second everything that's been said, and yeah, I'm disappointed to hear that Regen Ag course at Southern Cross is now no longer happening, Kate, because I actually just put on a young fella that's just finished that, and I think that's the one sad thing about being farmers. Like, there's no formal recognition of the trade, like for us even. Like, you can go and become a certified, qualified painter or plasterer and go to ag school and all that. And where's the place where we can learn and teach the kids and give them a qualification so they can go out and proudly say, I'm a regenerative farmer and I'm qualified to do this. And just so they've got that support network around that. And I'd also love to see not only the unis, because there's such a focus on that conventional ag system in that space, but also particularly in the cropping, like, the big corporations, GRDC and all that, all the money that they spend on how more ways to kill things, essentially, is what always the focus is on. So we don't lose the products that are designed to kill and create the environment to keep killing in. How do we, like Jonathan said, look at ways to make things grow better, and the alternative to that fungicide or the insecticide, and get those guys looking at this space, which I know they slowly are, to a point when they run out of options is usually the only driver. But I think this, the fertilizer spikes in prices and all these are great things to develop, just maybe look at other ways of doing things.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Grant. And yeah, I think we often talk in the team about the need, and I mentioned earlier, the need to earn the right, because that experience that people describe when they go to a farm that is full of life, that does have a lot of biodiversity, is undeniable. And I think it's hard we have to create the conditions for people to allow themselves to have that experience. And that's a lot of the work that we do is trying to earn the right to allow people to say, this isn't rubbish, this is good science, this is good work, these stories are grounded in proper evidence, and now I can allow myself to experience what is going on here, which is a landscape that is full of life, because I don't think it's just fluffy, woo-woo, whatever, the first reactions that people might have. I did want to ask another question from the chat for you, John, and you've sort of answered it in the chat a little, but what are some of the social barriers to adoption you've observed in the 1,000 Farms project, and what can we learn from that in order to have more impact?
Yeah. Well, Kate stole my line, and so this is, fundamentally, I think this is about an identity change that really is a challenging thing. And we create all of these. So we do a social survey as part of 1,000 Farms, like, what are the motivators of your behavior or your management behavior? And it's so interesting because whether they're regenerative or conventional, almost all of them say soil health is one of their primary drivers. And I'm like looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, you're beating the hell out of your soils, but yet you still self-identify as that being one of your major drivers. And so there's some real fascinating disconnects that are going on. And so you can't take, and then they'll, or the barriers to adoption, if you listen to the list, it's, I got to make money, right? Listen, in the US for sure, if you want to make money, you shouldn't be growing corn and beans. That is not one of your motivators. You could go out into one of those fields and plant a single watermelon plant, and you would make more net profit off of that one per acre off of that one watermelon plant than you make off of all of the grain that you're producing off of that thing. If this was really financial, then there's something else going on, right? And so I can present the data on each of these things, and that dispels those concerns, and they still don't change. And so it really forced us as a group here to kind of explore a little bit deeper. What is it? And in talking with rural sociologists, I mean, you're requiring these farmers to change their metrics of success and of what it means to be a good farmer and their identity, so that they can go into the coffee shop and hold their head up high. And their whole community is telling them they're dumb, and their families oftentimes are telling them this is the stupidest decision you've ever done. Why would you embarrass us? But if they have support, if they know that they're not alone, how many times have we given a field day and a farmer will stand up at the grower panel and be like, I farm down in Southern California, I grow almonds, and I've been trying this stuff, but until today, I felt entirely alone. And how important that is. We need that support. We need that sense of community, and it's been pounded out of our farming communities. That was one of the biggest take-home messages when I was out in Australia was, I mean, there's even like Motherland and these other organizations that are just trying to staunch this feeling of isolation. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think building communities around regen sure makes a lot of sense.
Can I?
Yeah, chip in. Go ahead, Kate.
I just wonder if it's useful to reflect that this complexity of change and of needing for community around us is actually happening across the whole population. It's not just farmers.
Yeah.
And that we can take some solace that this question of our identity and where we sit in life and in the care of the earth is really on everyone's plate. And so it's just, I think that's that gives me great hope to see that it's not just farmers grappling with this, it's the whole of our society, and that I think it's going to create powerful change in a hurry, that it's everyone grappling with this, not just farmers.
But food is such an important tool for bringing people together, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
We've got a few minutes left. There was a question in the chat about philanthropy and about resourcing this work. And you know, how do we unlock philanthropy? The question read, how do we unlock philanthropy away from narrow solutions to look at these root cause strategies? And a related question around, you know, the demand for the work increasing, and you know, how we can increase resourcing beyond the need for untied funding and the limited catalytic capital that's available in Australia. I'm keen to get your perspective on this, Rebecca, but I'll just quickly mention from my perspective and from Soils for Life's perspective, I think there are funds out there. There's philanthropy funding out there for solutions that people feel like they can trust and they can believe in. And, you know, given that quote from Michael Jeffrey about how soil sits at the center of just so many things that are essential for us to live, humans, let alone everything else on the planet, I think, you know, there's health philanthropy, there's agricultural philanthropy, there's environmental philanthropy, climate philanthropy, and then there's people who care about food security, but also national security. You know, there is nothing more important for national security than food security. And we do have a conversation about whether we grow a lot more food than we need in Australia. We export a lot of food, but there's also ways in which our food supply isn't secure when systems break down, when we're so dependent on inputs. And so I think there are lots of different ways in which these solutions are of interest to people who want to invest in change and in impact. And I think it's really making the case that we understand those solutions, we can make the connections, and we have real plans, you know, plans that they can trust to do our part to deliver on those. And I think it's hard for impact-oriented organisations to find the right balance there in saying, we're not going to solve the world's problems ourselves, but we are one piece of the puzzle. And that's hard to do. The temptation is always to say, oh, we're going to solve all the world's problems. And narrowing down to this is our piece of the puzzle is a really important piece that, you know, hopefully we're doing as part of this strategy. And I think then there is plenty of philanthropy out there that's interested in those issues. And I think it's a really important role for philanthropy. We're lucky to also have quite a fair amount of government grant funding available that we can tap into, and other project funding. So, you know, I think this is impact work. It's always going to require some degree of that funding. And I think it's there. Rebecca, did you want to add anything with your philanthropy hat on, or with any other hat on?
Thanks, Ellie. I just want to acknowledge the great and experienced people who are on the call, who are putting in some really great comments and questions, who've been working in this for a long time. So thank you all for being here, and for all the work that you've been doing over the years. I know Robert Quirk, about the sugarcane industry that he's worked so tirelessly at trying to shift. Interestingly, it was the work that I did, or the training I did coming into farming, the holistic management training, that has helped me figure out how to spend the philanthropic dollars, because the holistic management training comes with a framework to ask yourself, what's the root cause of this decision you're trying to make? And, you know, of the vast range of interventions I could do at any given time, what's the right one for this place, for my place at the moment? And particularly that root cause analysis. Am I getting to the root cause, or am I just perpetuating a problem? And that's enabled me to go, okay, well, let's put that lens over the philanthropic spend. And are we spending into perpetuating a symptom, or are we getting anywhere near the root cause? And I think that kind of thinking is really growing in the philanthropic world, particularly in the environmental world. And there's in the Environmental Grant Makers Network at the moment, we're doing quite a big project on how to build the awareness in the environmental movement that farming and agriculture can be a great solution. It's not the enemy, because there has been a bit of that ideological barrier there. And so I think there's lots of people's awareness is growing, and they're understanding the great interconnectedness of the work that we're all doing. And so I'm finding that really quite exciting, Ellie, and I think we are opening up some philanthropic dollars. I know it's very slow for some people, particularly in the investment side. That seems to have been stubborn, really getting investment dollars to move into regenerative enterprises. But on the philanthropic level, I think we're really getting some traction, and there's a lot of exciting work being done and a real building of the community that I see. So I'm a bit of a Pollyanna. I'm a natural optimist, but I think we're getting there.
Thanks, Beck. Did anyone else? I think that's probably the last question I'll ask to the panel. So if anyone else wanted to make any final comments, we've got 2 minutes before 11 when we'll wrap up. Did anyone want to add to that or make any final comments before we do wrap? All right. Well, with that, I will firstly say thank you so much to the panel. It's been such a fantastic conversation. We're going to make this recording available online if people want to catch up on it. The conversation in the chat, I've only partly been following it, but it's also been such a fantastic conversation. And thank you to everyone who's been contributing to the chat. I also want to say some huge thank yous to our donors, with whom we just would not possibly be able to do any of this work. Esty talked about how absolutely critical that stability of core operational funding is, but also the project funding that we've received. It makes it possible, and we take very seriously the responsibility that creates on us to use that money well. And to think carefully about how we invest that money that's being entrusted to us. I want to say thank you to all of our partners, many of whom are on the line as well. We're a very collaborative organisation internally, but also outside our own organisation, and we really value the spirit in which our partners engage with us and try to reciprocate that. To our team who really give pretty much everything to this job, sometimes too much. We try to recover and rest when it's too much. But this is not the sort of work where you can sign off at the end of the day and say, job done. And that is a challenge. And it's a challenge for all of us. And I really appreciate everything that the team puts into the work that we do, and we still somehow find time to make it fun and enjoy one another's company. And yeah, with that, I will say, look out for the strategic plan I should say, when I say the team, also our board, our amazing board. They are a volunteer board, but they put in some pretty serious hours. And, we're hugely appreciative of that time commitment from our board. I know that, it's easy for a board to make or break an organisation, and ours is absolutely supporting us every step of the way. Look out for the strategic plan in your inbox. I would commend it to you to have a read. there's more detail in there. And as I said earlier, please keep in touch, get in touch with us. We want to collaborate with you to make this work a success over the next couple of years. Thank you.